knowing that I told the class today that this would be a part two of the last Sunday Peace class I gave, which was sometime in February. And that was looking at what Srila Prabhupada was doing. Here in New York City, in the winter of 1965 and 1966, where he was living in a very unknown way in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, West 72nd Street, and by ordinary calculation, it didn't seem like he would be successful. But keeping in mind, as devotees and those with advanced shraddha, faith in the Supreme Personality of God, can perceive and understand that something very wonderful was about to happen. So, we ended the last class on this subject matter by reading from the Srila Prabhupada Leela, which was very wonderfully done by one of Srila Prabhupada's first disciples, Sasakunda Swami, who was a native New Yorker. His early youth, his early life in Queens, and then growing up in Staten Island, to be precise. And he, by talent and proclivity and by nature, is a writer. And so he very wonderfully made a 6-volume biography of Srila Prabhupada, Leela Amrita. Leela means pastimes, spiritual pastimes. Amrita means spiritual nectar, spiritual happiness. The Leela Amrita of Srila Prabhupada. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, "For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost to him, and he is never lost to me." And Krishna assures his pure devotee that my devotee will never be vanquished. There was never any doubt about this for Srila Prabhupada. At the time of his birth, on Nandotsav, this is the 9th day of the waning moon of the month of Bhadra. What was the previous day? Astami. Janmastami, the appearance day of Lord Krishna. And we will speak about another one of Srila Prabhupada's very early disciples. I think we can say his first Indian-bodied disciple. So those of you who are Indians by birth, you should know about the glories of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj and how overcoming the, let's say, things that were holding other Indians back at the time in the late 60s and 70s of surrendering to an actual bona fide spiritual master, how he transcended all of those inhibitions and barriers and led the way, how especially, well, for everyone, but especially, as Lord Chaitanya says, those who are born in Bharta Bhumi should make their life perfect, becoming Krishna conscious, and spread this knowledge to everyone all over the world and universe. So, this chapter that we just, these were the concluding words, was, it will not be possible to assist you. Prabhupada was living at a 100 West 72nd Street by the grace and charity, initially, of a Mayavadi yoga guru who more or less, just call it like it was just coming from India to America to exploit the sentiments of rich Americans, New Yorkers, giving them kind of like a watered down, whatever you want to say, I'll say it, just pay me. And the etiquette at least was there, recognizing Srila Prabhupada as a holy person, and also because there were very, very few Indian people here in the United States in the 1950s and 1960s, practically none. So to welcome a fellow countryman So after spending less than 2 weeks with him in his penthouse apartment, multi-room penthouse apartment at 33 Riverside Drive, that's 75th Street and Riverside Drive, very, even there's a plaque on the building. In this building lived Ira and, what was his brother? Ira Gershwin, George Gershwin and Ira Gershwin from 1920s, famous musician. So nearby, some distance, but it would be in vogue or chic for those who are involved in Lincoln Center, the Philharmonic Orchestra, the Opera House, Juilliard Ballet, School of Music, etc. Musicians would live in that area. So still to this day, that carries on the tradition. But because Srila Prabhupada would not tolerate the cheating, impersonalist, Mayavad philosophy, and would call it out whenever he had the opportunity, then in a polite but firm way, his host moved him to a windowless 5th floor yoga studio, which was kind of shaped like a railroad boxcar. There was no shower and no cooking facilities. This is 100 West 72nd Street, Columbus Avenue. Prabhupada had to walk to Amsterdam, to West End Avenue, then 3 avenue blocks north to 75th Street, and then the avenue block from West End Avenue all the way down to the corner of Riverside Drive where this building was. From November 1965 all the way until April 1966. 5 months, and that was the coldest, one of the coldest, snowiest winters on record. Prabhupada had to walk that distance every day to take a bath, take a proper bath, and cook a proper meal. So, this material world is known as the place of Durga, Durga Devi. Durga literally means fort. It also means fortress. You can't get out. It's like a prison. But it also means very, very difficult. So in the spiritual world, everything is very, very easy. There's a wonderful story of His Holiness Indradyumna Swami, who showed himself to be a highly capable personality. Early on, he joined in Michigan, University of Ann Arbor in 1970. That's a wonderful story in and of itself. But Srila Prabhupada asked him to go with the Detroit Temple president at the time, Bhagavan Das, and start the activities in Europe, help out in London and primarily in Paris, in France, which he was very successful in doing at the time. So Prabhupada had a visit to London, I believe 1971, and all the devotees went to the airport to greet Prabhupada at London Heathrow, and unfortunately one of Prabhupada's checked bags got lost in the system. So Prabhupada and his servant had cleared customs and their hand luggage, and they were ready to go back to the temple. So Indradyumna Swami, Indradyumna Das at the time, was elected or ordered, you have to stay here and wait for that bag to be retrieved, which took about an hour and a half. So finally, after an hour and a half, and Indradyumna Swami, he was like very upset that he would miss Prabhupada's triumphant arrival at the temple, and there was going to be a feast, and he had traveled himself, and would there be prasadam? So he actually it was 2 bags, 2 big, and in these days 50 pounds. Those days 70 pounds each you're allowed. And he gets to the temple in a taxi, and he comes inside the temple, and he sees like 2 brahmacharis just laying on their side, and all of these prasadam plates and prasadam containers all empty. And he says to the 2 brahmacharis who are like touching their stomach, they're so full, Prabhu, is there any prasadam? Oh, you should have come earlier. Everything's gone. We ate everything. We're stuffed, Can you help us this is Prabhupada's bags, can you help me to carry it up the 3 flights? Prabhu, we're just so tired, we have to lay down here for a while. So he lugs the bags upstairs, and he's in such a, not good state of mind that he doesn't even knock on Prabhupada's door, but just kind of bursts in, dragging the bags, and the servant at the time, Nanda Kumar, he said, "What are you doing?" And he just came within like 1 foot of Srila Prabhupada behind the door that he had just broken open to bring in. And he came to his senses and paid his obeisances flat. And of course, Srila Prabhupada knew what this was all about, and he gave him a big, giant pat on his back. And then he said something that Indradyumna Swami couldn't hear at the time because he's paying his obeisances. And then later, Nanda Kumar told him, "You don't know what mercy you got." Srila Prabhupada, he patted you on the back very firmly and he said, "Don't worry, when I bring you back home, back to Godhead, everything will be very, very easy and there will be no struggle like in this material world." So Prabhupada underwent very, very great struggle to come out of India. The first volume is called Lifetime in Preparation. And Prabhupada was born during the time of the British rule over India, which got arguably worse and worse as the 20th century progressed from its beginning. What I know was in the first decade of the 1900s, as an imposed famine, a rice embargo, and many huge numbers of people in Bengal were starved to death purposely by the British, on and on and on. And then the rise of the nationalistic movement. We have to get the British out of India, which became, of course, Mahatma Gandhi is saying nonviolence is our way of doing it, but it became violent in many different instances. Then the coming of World War II, and Srila Prabhupada himself was taking to the mission of his beloved spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. As early as 1922, he switched his allegiance from Gandhi's independence movement to become a follower of a bona fide saint and sadhu, and see his instructions as the topmost understanding of what is to be done and what is needed for everyone in all times, places, and circumstances, not just the temporary cause of getting the British out of India. And unfortunately, his family was not sympathetic and cooperative. Those of you who are married and have family, you know how difficult it can be if your partner is not on the same page with you. It becomes practically intolerable. So that was another issue for Srila Prabhupada. Then his spiritual master left the planet in 1936, and his spiritual master's mission was thrown into disarray, more or less because of the materially motivated outlook and desires of his older god brothers. So that shelter of his spiritual master's mission fragmented and splintered. Then World War II comes, and Prabhupada is getting older. By the end of World War II, Prabhupada is 49, 50 years old. Then, all of the great expectations of India achieving independence was kind of, the victory couldn't be celebrated so much through the 1950s because everything was just steered away from religious and pious life to industrialization of India. And Prabhupada trying to present the pure message of Krishna became very, very difficult. And he was ordered and instructed as a young man in 1922 to spread this knowledge in the West. Turn yourself into a very good English preacher. This will do good for you and those who will help you. Prabhupada was meditating on this very seriously since 1922. Finally, in obscurity, in poverty, he took sannyas in 1959, which he understood to be the irrevocable mandate, that which would help him to fulfill his spiritual master's mission. And finally, with great struggle over a 3-year period, printing in 1962, 1964, and 1965, each volume, 1, 2, 3, of the first canto. And not first class like later here, but Indian paper, Indian binding, and in Old Delhi, Chippiwada, Chandi Chowk, and if anyone has ever seen these original volumes, they had spelling mistakes, they had typographical mistakes. Prabhupada's English was not as exacting as it was after he'd come and spent some time in the United States. Like anyone who comes from a foreign country to the new country and they don't speak the language and they're forced and thrust into that situation where they have to, very quickly you pick it up, isn't it? Those of you who English is your second language have that experience. So Prabhupada, he tolerated, persevered through everything to get the job done. And Krishna was recording all that and noticing that, and at the right time, everything just exploded in like a perfect torrent of transcendental mercy. There is one place in the Srimad Bhagavatam which describes the churning of the milk ocean between the demons and the demigods. That's a big story in and of itself. Many different incarnations of the Lord appeared because of that activity. Mohini Murti, Vamana Dev, the dwarf incarnation. So at one point, the churning of the milk ocean before the nectar of immortality, which was the desired fruit of that activity, came about, a very dangerous poison came. And that poison was so terrible that it threatened to destroy everyone in the entire universe. So the leaders of the universe, headed by Lord Brahma, they went to the personality who they knew could save all living entities. Not only did that personality they knew had the power, but he had the compassion to do so. That personality is Lord Shiva. So after understanding the situation, personally perceiving it and having explained to him by Lord Brahma and other great personalities, Lord Shiva is always benevolent toward all living entities. When he saw that the living entities were very much disturbed by the poison which was spreading everywhere, he was very compassionate. Thus he spoke to his eternal consort, Bhavani, as follows. My dear Bhavani, just see how all these living entities have been placed in danger because of the poison produced from the churning of the ocean of milk. It is my duty to give protection and safety to all living entities struggling for existence. Certainly it is the duty of the Master to protect his suffering dependents. So this is the secret to success. How to live and mold your life in such a way that the time that you have on this earth, the energy that you have, the strength, the intelligence, whatever influence you have by your karma or talent, to use that to qualitatively, and the qualitative is automatically accomplished if you are sincerely serving the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the highest qualitative, philanthropic, compassionate activity. Of this there is no doubt. Why? Because that philanthropy, that charity, frees everyone from the cycle of repeated birth, death, disease, and old age as a byproduct to achieving love of Godhead. One of Srila Prabhupada's main points, which is an authorized point for all devotees of Krishna to point out to everyone in this material world, who is giving the answer to solve the 4 main problems of life: old age, disease, and death. And the fourth one, which actually should be the first one, but I'm saying it fourth, birth. Repeated birth. It's not that when we're born, we just came into existence out of nothing, out of nowhere, and just, we came from somewhere. Krishna even, one of the first statements that he makes in the most essential teaching, to realize you're not your body. For one who is born, this is an easy one, we all know this. For one who is born, death is certain. They make a joke here in New York, and maybe it's all over the place. Two things are certain in life, death and taxes, right? Ha, ha, ha. It's actually not funny. It's very serious. But for one who is, and this is actually, Krishna is saying, for one who has died, birth is certain, to console Arjuna, who's faced with a task that he has to fight in a fratricidal war, and the people on the opposing side, who by all reason and evidence, legally, morally, ethically, are the wrongdoers, are the usurpers. Are we going to just sit back like pacifists and have some crazy mob come in here, and destroy the temple and shoot us all and destroy the deity? No, we're going to defend ourselves, isn't it? And if we don't, then we're highly irresponsible. That was Arjuna's position. So, okay, you have some relationship with them, and by ill luck or bad discrimination or use of their intelligence, they chose the wrong path, and you feel compassion. You don't want to have to be the one to kill them, but you're not killing them. The soul is forever. And for one who dies on the battlefield, even though they're not in the righteous position, but because the righteous people are fighting the good fight, they achieve liberation. Anyone who died on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in the direct presence of Krishna is awarded liberation. But liberation from repeated birth and death, as I just said, is a small byproduct. Just like, you want $1 million. Can I have $5 to buy a round trip on the subway? What do you? Yeah, of course. You got $1 million. A byproduct, automatically included. And Krishna says, one who distributes this knowledge is the most dear servant in this world, and there'll never be one more dear to me than him. So Prabhupada and pure devotees of his standard, and he's asking us, begging us, to follow in his path, which is of that standard also, and become glorious. The distribution of this Krishna consciousness all over the world. People in general, being bewildered by the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are always engaged in animosity towards one another. Okay. Well, we're not being animosity, like peace and love, brother. You're good, I'm good, it's all good, man, all good absolute, just you don't cause blood to come from my body, and I won't cause, what's the problem? Animosity has a much more higher and subtle definition, doing anything that impedes any living entity, what to speak of human beings, achieving the fruit of getting liberation from the cycle of repeated birth, death, disease, and old age. So if you promote ignorance, if you tacitly, is that a word? Is that the word I'm looking for? Don't call out ignorance, nescience, when it's there, and try to show people the right path, then you're engaged in a type of animosity. Even, ignoring the wrong and not standing up for it, that's also violence. So therefore, the pure devotee, when they're in this world, they cannot tolerate ignorance to cover anyone. They're so much overwhelmed with compassion for everyone based on the knowledge of who they actually are and what their supreme potential is. Not only is, but lost. We've forgotten. So they cannot tolerate. They must act. It's like a school building burning down and children are crying for help. You'll risk your life to go in to save them. Or at least the firemen will. And even they saved many, 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 but some perished. They won't think. A good-hearted person won't think, oh, I saved all these people. They'll be haunted for the rest of their life. I could have done more. I could have gotten more out. There's the story of Oskar Schindler. They made a big movie about this, Steven Spielberg. He was German, but he entered into World War II as a businessman. He could see how much money he could make as a war profiteer, exploiting slave Jewish labor. And then as time went by and he saw the atrocities of the Nazis, he joined the Nazi Party early on to keep up appearances. It's good for business. But when he understood what was happening, he had amassed a fortune by mid-war period. But he spent all that money on bribes and on doing all different types of risky things to save 1,200 Jewish people that he had developed a relationship with, trying to over like 4 or 5 years. And at the conclusion, he just lamented how he wasted so much money, squandered so much of his time, and if he had done more, he could have gotten more people out. This is the way a pure devotee thinks. This is the characteristic of a Vaishnava, para dukkha dukhi. A Vaishnava is always unhappy to see the conditioned souls unhappy. Otherwise, he would have no business teaching them how to become happy. In materialistic life, people must certainly engage in activities of animosity. Materialistic life is therefore compared to a blazing forest fire that automatically takes place. Lord Shiva and his followers in the disciplic succession try to save people from this dangerous condition of materialistic life. So literally and figuratively, swallowing the ocean of poison. So devotees, they don't retreat to the Himalayas. They don't try to take care of their own spiritual life, their own happiness. They drink the ocean of poison of Kali Yuga. And because they're doing so on behalf of Lord Sri Krishna, Lord Shiva, his potency comes from Lord Vishnu. And by that, Lord Shiva and all devotees who act on Krishna's behalf, they are infallible, ever victorious in all circumstances. This is the duty of devotees following the principles of Lord Shiva. So we will come back to this after we look at the life of Srila Prabhupada's disciple, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami. His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami appeared on this planet on the most auspicious day of Anada Ekadasi. 8th day is Janmashtami, 9th day is Srila Prabhupada's appearance day. 2 days later is Ekadasi, and that is the birthday of Gopal Krishna Maharaj. He passed away on this Dwadasi day of this Ekadasi, in this holy month of Vaishak. Vaishak is one of the holiest months. Notably, we have Akshaya Tritiya coming very soon. It's a very auspicious day. For one in India, that is Chandan Yatra. In New Delhi, India, having named as Gopal Krishna at the time of his appearance. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj was one of the only personalities that Srila Prabhupada accepted as a disciple and didn't change his name. He graduated from the University of Delhi, studied business management at Sorbonne University in Paris on a scholarship from the French government, and later obtained a master's degree in business administration from McGill University at Montreal, this is French Quebec. So France and Quebec, they're very much big brother and younger brother in their dealings. Meeting with his spiritual master. Having received an invitation from His Grace Mahapurush Das, the then president, ISKCON Montreal, that Srila Prabhupada would be arriving in Montreal on June 1st, 1968, Gopal Krishna arrived there on the 30th of May. After the kirtan, Gopal Krishna inquired if he could render some service, and he was immediately sent to clean Srila Prabhupada's apartment. So Hansarupa Prabhu was giving class this morning, and he mentioned in particular Sadaputta Das, who became one of the most qualified scientific devotees. Prabhupada made a Bhaktivedanta Institute. He said that the demoniac atheism has seeped its way into science, trying to claim that there is no God, life comes from chemicals, and this false knowledge, nescience, must be defeated. So he's he was a genius, Sadaputta. So, but he came to the temple very, very humble. No, the devotees didn't understand who he was, what his qualification was. His first service was to wash all the Sunday feast pots and pans for Radha Govinda. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj doing the same, cleaning services. He first met Srila Prabhupada then on the evening of June 1st, 1968. Within the first 2 weeks of meeting Srila Prabhupada, he decided that he would accept him as his spiritual master. In the words of Gopal Krishna Maharaj, when I first met Srila Prabhupada, the motivation to surrender to God was already there in me, and 2 weeks after meeting him, I knew that Lord Krishna wanted me to surrender to Srila Prabhupada. In fact, around December 1967, some 6 months earlier, Gopal Krishna had started visiting many Hindu temples, gurudwaras, and churches in his search for the absolute truth. Every Sunday, he would seek out a different church, temple, or gurudwara, and would spend the whole day there. Srila Prabhupada was always sympathetic and extra merciful to Indians. But of all the Indians who came to hear him, young Gopal Krishna was very special. So he was 25 years old at the time. While all other Indians would offer obeisances and sit for a few minutes, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj was the only Indian who would come regularly and sit right till the end of the lecture. During the 3-month period that Srila Prabhupada stayed in Montreal, so Prabhupada had come with a 2-month tourist visa in September 1965, and extended it and extended it and extended it, and finally no more extension. So you have to leave the country and get something new. So he left and spent 3 months in Montreal. You can look in the Prabhupada Museum, and you can see from the U.S. Embassy in Montreal, Srila Prabhupada's fingerprints, which are necessary to enter the country as a, legal alien. Ooh. Everywhere is Krishna's place, and you're a devotee of Krishna, so you are a citizen of everywhere. Prabhupada compared that to, the border guards and the immigration, to barking dogs. Who are you? Why are you coming here? Actually, Hiranyakashipu, Jai and Vijay were cursed because the 4 Kumaras were trying to enter into Vaikuntha Loka, and they didn't realize who they were and checked them and said, who the heck are you stopping us from going to see our beloved Lord Vishnu, This type of mentality is based on demons who live in the material world. Best you go back down there and, become Hiranyakashipu and terrorize the universe. That is a great story in and of itself, the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev. Stay tuned, coming very soon, coming attractions. Of course, I did not know the importance of hearing at that time, but my only small qualification was that I was very respectful to Srila Prabhupada from the first day I saw him, and I would stay for his lectures till the end and leave only after he had left the temple. Srila Prabhupada himself, noticed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he hadn't seen him for 10 years, 1922 to 1932, and he was being recommended for initiation, and they were like introducing, this is Abhay Charan Day, and he's helped us do this. I know who he is. He likes to hear. I have marked him. You don't have to recommend him. I don't need your recommendation. I've already decided. Around that time, he was working for Pepsi Cola during marketing research. Srila Prabhupada started taking a great personal interest in him and would talk to him almost every day. Since then, both of them started a regular correspondence, Srila Prabhupada writing as many as 3 long letters every month. So if you look statistically, letters from Srila Prabhupada to his disciples, Gopal Krishna Maharaj is definitely up there in the top of letter exchanges. Thus, a very intimate guru-shishya relationship had already begun to establish. On May 27, 1969, Prabhupada wrote to say, as your name is already Gopal Krishna, there is no need for change. You will now be known as Gopal Krishna Das. He was only 25 years old at the time. Later on, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj moved into the temple and engaged himself fully in the service of Srila Prabhupada. For many years, he acted as Srila Prabhupada's personal secretary. Now this biography jumps to 1975. But Gopal Krishna Maharaj lived here in Brooklyn, the Henry Street Temple, Hansarupa said, for about a year. And Srila Prabhupada was starting to open up India. He had gone there as early as October 1970 with some of his best hand-picked American and European disciples, and he was engaging them in the administration and managerial activities in India. And those of you who have been to India, or those of you who are from India, you can understand that in India, the way of doing things is quite different than over here in other countries, yes? Especially 50, 60 years ago, something that you could do here in the United States in 10 minutes, to get it done in India might take 5 days or a week, right? Anyway. They're catching up a little better, but still, we call it the India factor. So in 1975, Srila Prabhupada, and another big problem was, because America sided with Pakistan. This is the politics back then. And Russia, Soviet Union, sided with India. So, Americans, they have CIA, what is this? Very difficult to keep American devotees in India. Their visas were expiring, and such a problem. Gopal Krishna Maharaj, Indian, this country, no visa required, you can live there, right? So Srila Prabhupada made him the GBC for entire India from there was nobody joining. No Indians were joining. They're very suspicious. I even remember visiting India, Vrindavan. 1984 was my first time, and most of the devotees in the temple were all American, European, South American, one or two, 3 Indians. Then I come back like 1990 or so, and it started. Now it's like completely the other way around. The foreigners are the minority, and the Indians are the majority. Srila Prabhupada specifically instructed him to print and expand book distribution in India. Also, Srila Prabhupada entrusted Gopal Krishna Maharaj to oversee various important projects such as Vrindavan, Hyderabad, Mayapur, and Mumbai. Recognizing his dedicated service and mood of sincere surrender, Srila Prabhupada was anxious that book printing in India should expand. So, writing Srimad Bhagavatam, printing it in English here in the United States, but what about all over the world? India in the beginning, they just had a couple of Bengali and Hindi small publications. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he oversaw the translation and printing and distribution of all of Srila Prabhupada's books in Hindi and many other Indian languages. Srila Prabhupada was especially pleased when he presented him the copies of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in Hindi. He encouraged him to utilize his talents for selling his books as widely as possible, so he went to school for marketing. Instead of doing it for Pepsi Cola, you can do it for Srila Prabhupada's books. Which is better? I'll take choice 2. Now you can utilize your knowledge of marketing for Krishna's service. Idam hi pumsas tapasa smitasyava. This is the perfection of education. Whatever you know, whatever you do it for Krishna. In 1976, Srila Prabhupada appointed Gopal Krishna Maharaj as GBC for Russia. He made several trips to the Soviet Union. 1976. When did communism fall? 11 years later. Am I right? 1987? That's the right year? 1990? 91. So 15 years. Taking very severe risking grave dangers. He preached and distributed books there. On the instruction of Srila Prabhupada, he took part in the International Book Fair, which was, I believe, in Moscow. They were able to kind of sneak, or, because one thing, the Russians and the communist Russians, they had a respect for Indian culture because they're allies, Russia and India. Srila Prabhupada's instructions, being his life and soul, empowered his vision, and amazing feats began to manifest. After the fall of the communist regime in Soviet Union and the freedom granted to religious expression, he helped to establish many centers in the erstwhile Soviet Union. In 1981, he took the sannyas order. A year later, in March 82, on the auspicious day of Gaur Purnim, he accepted the responsibility of becoming an initiating spiritual master. Being an empowered representative of Lord Chaitanya, he engaged tirelessly in distributing Lord Gauranga's mercy and is one of the important spiritual preceptors who is fully devoted to fulfilling Lord Gauranga's prophecy that my name will be chanted in every village and town of the world. Distributing the holy name to conditioned souls, preaching in an unfavorable environment and risky places, perfect management of the society, demonstrating exemplary behavior, and practicing devotional service unchecked. He took a lot of responsibility personally for delivering conditioned souls worldwide. I believe the final number I read today, he has 50,000 disciples from all over the world. Such responsibility. I know that His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj was instructed directly by Srila Prabhupada, and perhaps Gopal Krishna Maharaj as well, I'm not aware, that you each should have 50,000 disciples. He is the GBC from Mumbai, northern India. That includes New Delhi, Haryana, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Vrindavan, Chandigarh, Mayapur, Nairobi, Kenya, Canada, some states of America, and many parts of the Commonwealth of Independent States. Also, he is the chairman and trustee of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, the world's largest publisher and distributor of Vedic literature. After Srila Prabhupada's departure, he engaged in inspiring and completing many of the largest ISKCON temples in India. In 1970, some of the important temple projects which have been completed under his untiring and dedicated efforts and directions include Sri Sri Radha Bunki Bihari Temple in Nairobi in November 1994, Sri Sri Radha Parthasarthi Temple east of Kailash, it's near the airport, in New Delhi in April 1998, also known as the Glory of India Project, Heaven on Earth Project in Mumbai, December 2003, Jagannath Temple in Ludhiana on Balaram Jayanti, 2004, Radha Govinda, Faridabad, Krishna Balaram, Punjabi Bagh, New Delhi, western part of New Delhi, and many, many more. The Glory of India project in New Delhi, inaugurated by Sri Atul Bihari Vajpayee, the then Prime Minister of India, provides a multimedia visual display, Veda Cultural Museum, open-air theater. Also, the Heaven on Earth project in Mumbai is housed with modern facilities for imparting the essence of Vedic scriptures to spiritual seekers, a mass prasadam hall, a library with a reading room, Vedic samskar hall, besides a spiritually nourishing Govinda's restaurant. Many, many things. So Prabhupada wanted very much for India to come into its rightful claimant as the most important country in the world, not by industry or materialistic contribution, but by resurrecting the Vedic culture. Indian people, by nature, it's in their blood to become Krishna conscious. It's like automatic, just like we had a half marathon or whatever, and I made this example. So, okay, the full marathon here in New York City, it's in November. It starts in Staten Island on the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. That side comes up, runs through Bay Ridge, Bensonhurst, Sunset Park, 4th Avenue, all the way up here through Brooklyn, rounds the bend at Flatbush and Lafayette, goes up into Williamsburg, Greenpoint, then crosses into Queens, Long Island City, goes into Manhattan for a ways over the Queensboro Bridge, goes up the Upper East Side, crosses the Willis Avenue Bridge into the Bronx briefly, then comes back over into Manhattan, comes down the Upper East Side, concluding at Tavern on the Green in Central Park, which is roughly like 68th Street. So that's 26 miles. So if I told you, I'm going to give you a 13-mile head start, you can start running in Greenpoint, whereas I have to start in Staten Island. Don't you think you should win? That is birth in India, coming to Krishna conscious. And you see that temples, I was just in Farmington Hills in Michigan, and we had Yugalaki Shore. He gave the last week's class here. He's the president there. And it's all Indians, but they are like taking the Krishna conscious with complete abandon and enthusiasm, and it's a beautiful thing to behold. No Hindu schmindu in their head. They're just full Krishna conscious bhaktas, you know. And nobody can argue them, oh, you misappropriate. What is it? Cultural misappropriation, right? You can accuse us white people or, foreigners, you've taken our culture, and where are you steering it? This is our culture. All right, take to your culture, right? And nobody can fault you. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he very exemplary devotees, and he has a very, very lasting contribution to Srila Prabhupada's movement. And although the departure day is taken as something sad, it's actually very glorious because he leaves an entire legacy which is to be maintained and continued, and it's not just an individual, his own legacy, but it's a legacy linked to Srila Prabhupada, to the disciplic succession, and ultimately to Lord Krishna himself. So we're going to have a part 3 of Srila Prabhupada on the Upper West Side, because we've kind of come to the end of our rope here, and the curtain is not closed yet. It usually closes at 7:30. Perhaps they're keeping it open. And I will conclude today's class by looking at the most important purport and verse which concludes this pastime of Lord Shiva saving the universe, drinking the ocean of poison. And it's something we can all emulate and follow. Tapyante loka tapena sarva prayasojana paramaradhanam taddi prushadi kalatmanaha. It is said that great personalities always accept voluntary suffering because of the suffering of people in general. So why do they do that? What is the nature of that acceptance of voluntary suffering? Parama aradhanam. Radha Govinda aradhanam. She's the topmost worshiper. Worship of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To the Parama aradhanam, this is considered the highest method of worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present in everyone's heart. In the spiritual world, where everyone is perfectly self-realized, you can't do that, because everyone's already perfect. But here, that Audarya mood, which is, that Madhurya, that sweetness of loving Krishna as a fully aroused, self-realized soul, ever increasing in perfection and variegatedness. It's not diminished at all, but it is translated or transcribed, or it reappears here as Audarya, compassion. Here is an explanation of how those engaged in activities for the welfare of others are very quickly recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one can excel him by satisfying me, by worship. There are different kinds of welfare activities in this world, but the supreme welfare activity is the spreading of Krishna consciousness. Other welfare activities cannot be affected. The laws of nature and the results of karma cannot be checked. It is by destiny or the laws of karma that one must suffer or enjoy. No one can change this. So one should endeavor for that which is never obtained by wandering up and down the universe as a result of the reactions of karma. What is that? One should endeavor to become Krishna conscious. If one tries to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, he should be understood to be performing the best welfare activity. The Lord is automatically very pleased with him. If the Lord is pleased with him, what is left for him to achieve? If one has been recognized by the Lord, even if he does not ask the Lord for anything, this is also the secret to success. Selfless servant, not wanting any recognition. Hey, look at me, you see what I just did? Woohoo! Check it out. Silent worker, because Krishna sees. And those who you really want to be recognized by, they will see. They will understand. Because Krishna will enlighten them to understand your actual mood, your actual intention, your actual desire. The best welfare activity is raising people to the platform of Krishna consciousness, since the conditioned souls are suffering only for want of Krishna consciousness. The Lord himself comes to mitigate the suffering of humanity. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya traduskatam. To deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion, I invent myself millennium after millennium. All the Shastras conclude, and all saintly persons, and all spiritual masters, and all pure devotees, everywhere, for all of time, past, present, and future, everlasting, all confirm that the spreading of the Krishna consciousness movement is the best welfare activity in the entire universe. Because of the ultimate benefit this bestows upon people in general, the Lord very quickly recognizes such service performed by a devotee. His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. His Holiness, Srila Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Haribo Hare Krishna.
His Grace Rama Prabhu Ki Jai.
Push the button off. Okay.